But Tomlin gets his contract extension. This is something that was toward the end of the season, as the Steelers were struggling and their offense was crap. It was very real. It was very real that Tomlin was considering options both now and after this season because he's only under contract for one more year. And for the first time in his tenure as the Steelers head coach, he was entering what would have been lame duck season. And it gave him the ability to think differently than he ever has because he's always been under contract for at least 2 years. So he had in view, I got one more year and I can do something that we never see. We rarely see coaches do in the NFL, become free agents. Players do it all the time. Coaches never want to roll those dice on themselves. They never want to give up the seat they have. And now Tomlin yesterday gets a 3-year extension that puts him under contract through 2027. That's 20 years. 20 years. It'll be 21 years as head coach of the Steelers if he sees out the next 4 years. And it's not a surprise. It was fully expected. The Steelers weren't going to fire him. This came down to what Tomlin wanted to do. And one of the things I've heard, Chris, in the aftermath of this transformation of the offense, with the quarterback depth chart blown up and replaced with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields,
right.
And you've got new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith.
Yeah,
there is a rejuvenation to Mike Tomlin and excitement to Mike Tomlin that has caused him to realize there's no place like home, and there's no reason to change. We're going to make things happen here. And Steelers fans, especially those who are always quick to say fire Tomlin when the team loses 2 or more games in a row, and plenty of those folks are upset about the extension. Just wait, because he's had a kick in the ass. He's got a new lease on life, and he's ready to, I think, do even better than he's done in recent years.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, hopefully they got the quarterback situation figured out. And the offense. The offense has definitely been a thorn in the side, right, for the Steelers, really for the last 4 or 5 years, right, towards the end of Big Ben's era where Big Ben was still playing some solid football. But as we know, it was dink and dunk. It was the shortest passing game in all of football, right? So they couldn't really run the ball and do stuff there. I mean, my first thought with all of this, first off, is yes, of course, I think he's one of the best coaches in football. I think he's arguably the best leader in all of football, and the ability to rally men together to attack one common goal and block out noise, excuses, all that BS, right? Mike Tomlin is a master in that department, so you got to respect that. The second thing I think is that is extremely cool about it is, hey, it's 2024. We're in the era of, wait, you were good yesterday and you're not good today? You're fired. You're fired. I know you were awesome and I said you were the best I've ever seen yesterday, but today's today and you're fired. I don't care, right? It's just we're in a world now that's cutthroat. What have you done for me lately? What? You went to the Super Bowl a few times 2 or 3 years ago? You're fired. Get out of here. This was a bad year. What? Bill Belichick, 20 years of greatness, 1 year bad. Hold on. Get out of here. You're not worth a damn anymore. I mean, that's, and I know I'm having a little fun there and taking some liberties, but you know what I'm trying to say. So that's the first thing that I just find refreshing, cool, whatever you want to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers in the era of everybody trying to, we got to do this to compete or be better right now. The fact that they're still old school, they're loyal, they believe in people, they believe in a process. I really love that. I really respect that about the Steelers. And then, of course, I respect the things that I just said about Mike Tomlin. His toughness, ability to lead men, his ability to lead a team. And a lot of times it's got a lot of personalities and get them to attack one common goal. Like we talk about all the time. When I go to training camp, I get in training camp, I talk to coaches, anybody that's got the Steelers early on in the season, it's always like, what do they look like in training camp? How much are they hitting, right? Everyone is always scared of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers' physicality because they know that that's what he instills in his football team. So at a base level from football, like work, right, respect, doing the right things, I love Mike Tomlin. I mean, I love him, and I think this is a great extension for them, and it's way more good than bad since he's been there in the Steelers. And the last thing I'll say, Mike, before I kick it off to you too, is he has a little bit of a gift and the curse here. I talk about this sometimes with like great quarterbacks or great athletes, LeBron James or John Elway, right? They get sometimes, crucified for oh, they went to the finals and they couldn't win. And my point is like sometimes like, well, they shouldn't, like these are the only two humans that could bring these teams to the finals. So there's something to be said about that. And Mike Tomlin, I feel like, in a lot of ways, has brought some teams that are very mediocre and made them playoff or playoff caliber, and it's actually hurt them in a lot of ways. Because now it kind of keeps them up in the upper echelons of teams and never lets them have a high draft pick, right? There's never a like, hey, we got to blow it up and totally tear this down and rebuild it. And in some ways, I feel like, that's almost hurt him, the fact that he is such a good coach and he's optimized some of these teams that are not as talented as their bottom line record showed at the end of the year.
On one hand, it's very easy for the Steelers to have stability when they are always relevant.
Yeah.
But they haven't won a playoff game.
I know.
Since that win over the Chiefs that sparked Kansas City to go get Patrick Mahomes. So the last time the Steelers won in the postseason, Mahomes wasn't in the league, Josh Allen wasn't in the league, Lamar Jackson wasn't in the league, Joe Burrow clearly wasn't in the league. I mean, the game has changed dramatically since the last time the Steelers both made it to the playoffs and emerged victorious. They still have a knack for getting back, especially when they've been written off. And I think the reality is, and this is where Tomlin needs, I think, to get more credit, he's managed to do more with less.
That's where it is, Mike.
The problem in Pittsburgh isn't coaching. The problem in Pittsburgh is they're not as talented as Tomlin's coaching would lead you to believe that they are. And part of it's on him because, and this is where it's always difficult to fully understand what's happening with the organization, because I continue to be a firm believer, as with most teams, ownership is very involved in Pittsburgh, but Art Rooney II does not feel compelled to take credit, and it's more of a low-key running the show. He doesn't want the credit, and he doesn't want the scrutiny because you can't fire the owner, and you don't want the fans chanting "Fire Rooney" at the game. You don't want the uprising to be directed at ownership. So if you never really understand how much the owner is stirring the stew, he never becomes the object of fan discontent. But whatever structure they put in place to put talent together and decide who the offensive coordinator is going to be. Remember when they pushed out Bruce Arians after the 2011 season?
Yep.
When Tomlin had told Bruce Arians, I'm getting you a contract extension, which would, unless Tomlin was lying to him, indicate Tomlin wanted him back. What happened? Arians out, and in comes Todd Haley, who was like a legacy employee because his dad was a scout with the team, and there was always that belief that that was a Rooney hire, not a Tomlin hire.
Certainly seemed like something in the outside.
And Tomlin was forced to coexist with Todd Haley.
Right.
And there's always been this notion that, Tomlin is kind of operating with one hand tied behind his back because he's not running the show. He's dealing with the decisions others are making, and he's got to turn it all into chicken salad, and he does. And I can't help but wonder whether he's decided, as he got to this precipice of I got 1 year left.
Right.
And maybe I'll become a free agent. Maybe he has quietly, and I don't know this, but maybe he's quietly finagled a little more juice. Maybe this whole out with Kenny Pickett, out with Mason Rudolph, out with Mitch Trubisky, in with Russell Wilson, in with Justin Fields. Maybe that's Tomlin saying, hey, you want me to be here for another 5, 10, 15 years? You want to be able to say we've only had 3 coaches since 1969, and you want to continue that past 2029 and beyond? That's fine, but you got to let me. I mean, it's the Bill Parcells thing. You want me to cook the meal? You got to at least let me have input in the grocery list.
Well, that would be, one of my first things I would use to defend Mike Tomlin against, some of the Steelers fans that don't love the hire or anything like that. I'd go, one, I mean, what did you really expect from your football team over the last 4 to 5 years? What on the team led people in Pittsburgh or that fan base to go, wait, this is our year, we're so good, and we underperformed? I've looked at it like the exact opposite. I mean, I think we both have. to go like, hey, yeah, there's some parts, but how good can they be? And then you watch the season and go, well, yeah, okay, they're not that great, but damn, here they are in the playoff picture. Here they are in the playoff picture. Wow, did they have some defensive game plan today? Wow, that was special. Whoa, they were physical. Oh, those two things are Mike Tomlin things. Oh, man, did they manage the game to perfection? Oh, that's another Mike Tomlin thing. So that's where I feel like the fact that he's overachieved with some of those teams we're talking about, I do think has hurt him. Let alone, okay, yeah, hasn't been a playoff win in a few years. I get that. All right. But again, like we said, some of these teams I don't think were even playoff caliber. They got there and went one and done and lost, right? And then I think the other thing that adds to it is, okay, the last time they did win a playoff game was the Chiefs, and they went to New England, right, and kind of got dominated and blown out, right? There's the Jaguars upset loss at home in the divisional playoff game, and a year where, they were probably arguably the best team in football that year as well, right? So I think some of that has led to this, like, oh, we don't know about Mike Tomlin, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. Again, I think he's done more with less, a lot more, to your point there. And I would say, too, with the team and, yeah, the front office and all that, I think they've failed Mike Tomlin to a degree as well. Now, you can maybe get on him about the offensive coordinator stuff, but to your point, I think the whole offensive coordinator issue started because of the Bruce Arians, and it just kind of rolled down from there. But regardless, right, the team itself has been patchy, is what I would say. Nothing on the O-line. They haven't been able to run the ball in forever since Le'Veon Bell left. The quarterback play, of course, has been an issue and been hanging on too long. So that was hard for Tomlin to manage all of that. The defense itself. I don't look at the defense and go, oh, wow, it's just talent all over the place. I go, damn, there's Cam Hayward, and there's TJ Watt. And then, okay, who else is helping out this year? Oh, okay, we got Alex Smith, who's kind of come on. But this is not like the Steelers of 15 years ago when he first took over, where you just go, wait, corner's awesome. Oh, all 4 linebackers are awesome. Oh, 2 out of the 3 D linemen are awesome. Oh, Troy Polamalu's back there, one of the greatest ever. I mean, that's the way they were in the first few years, the first 10, 8, 9 years of Tomlin's regime. It's fallen off in that department, and he's made them look better than what they are, is what I would argue, and that's why I'll stick up for him.
They are nevertheless in the midst of a franchise record 5-game postseason losing streak. The last playoff win was January 15, 2017, more than 7 years ago in Kansas City. They have since lost to the Patriots in the conference championship game, the next year to the Jaguars in the wild card round, the next year, no, it was 3 years later, so they had 2 years of no playoffs. Yep. They got blown out by the Browns. Well,
they were 12-4, and that's another part of the reason I think it was an ugly 12-4. It wasn't good, but they lost at home by the Browns, and the Browns is the Browns and all that, right? And, yeah, that's, I think, another part of where people pile on Mike Tomlin that I don't think's fair. Keep going, Mike. I like what you're saying here.
Well, this is the more important point. It's a quarterback-driven league now.
Yes.
And the Steelers are finding a way to remain competitive and in contention and make it to the playoffs more often than not without a high-end quarterback. The final years of Ben Roethlisberger were not good. 2019, he was injured week 2. He had that elbow problem, and it went kaflooey, technical term, in week 2. And you had guys like Devlin Duck Hodges. Remember him?
Yes.
Playing as an undrafted rookie in 2019. And then by the time you get to 2020, okay, Ben rebounds. But, that 21 season, that was the year where they made him an offer on a reduced salary that they didn't want him to accept.
Exactly.
And he did. They wanted him to go. So 2021, which still resulted in a playoff berth, was in some respects a lost season for the Pittsburgh Steelers because they did not want Ben Roethlisberger to come back. Now, they'll never admit that, but that's what happened. They made him an offer, and they thought it's respectable objectively, but it's not going to be enough. It's too much that we're asking for him to give up.
Right.
He's not going to come back. And he did.
Right.
And he did shit, what do we do now?
Exactly.
We got a season with a guy that we're
just have to manage.
And
right.
That last year, he was a shell of himself. He couldn't run laterally. He couldn't extend plays. He couldn't do all the things that made him great. It was just hold it together for this one final season. And somehow they made it to the playoffs that year, And one of the two idiots on this program actually picked them to win in Kansas City, and it was 7-0 at one point, and you were very nervous about that, but the final score was 42-21. They just couldn't compete with teams with great quarterbacks.
No, exactly right. And to the point you're making and the things we've talked about, and let's go back to the time and when we were talking about it, not only this year, right, but, the year before last where they just missed out, or those 2 years they got in, or at least the 1 year, 2021. I mean, we were both a little bit like, I was going, man, I hope they don't make the playoffs because it's not going to be a good first-round game. It's not. They're not really a playoff team. They're there because of toughness and Tomlin's ability to come up with a game plan that made sense for their team, and they would maximize it, and he would be great in coaching situational football, and the game was managed to perfection, and they didn't mess games up. And then, of course, they'd find a way to block a punt and get a strip sack fumble or something like that. And you're like, what? They've been outplayed here today, and they're on a 3-game winning streak. And they'd get in the playoffs and, of course, get blown out. But, again, I think that's more of like you originally started this whole segment with Tomlin. He's done more with less lately than the other way around. That's the big headline to me. And yeah, they need to help him out a little bit, and I think hopefully he's helped himself out with Arthur Smith and a new offense and a new look and a new quarterbacks that got a little more life and pizzazz, and I think add a little more juice to their building altogether. I think is going to make give that organization some extra juice, for lack of a better way to say anything there. I'm blanking on the word I wanted to use.
A lot of Steelers fans are skeptical about Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator. I'll point out to them that just because he did not do well as a head coach doesn't mean he won't do well as an offensive coordinator. He did well enough as an offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans, working for a defensive head coach to become a head coach in the first place.
Go to AFC Championship game with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill.
There could be a little Norv Turner going on with, there are plenty of guys who are great coordinators who, for whatever reason, it's not going to work for them to be a head coach. So, there's just this pessimism and negativity and glass half empty with some Steelers fans that believe Mike Tomlin is never going to deliver the thing that he delivered in his second season, a Super Bowl win, and he got him back 2 years later. And yes, 14 years is a long time between Super Bowl appearances when you're a Steelers fan, and 7 years is a long time for the gap between postseason wins. But I think they got the right guy, and as we have said time and again, if he would ever be fired by the Steelers. This is why I think he was taking very seriously this opportunity and this possibility of coaching out his contract and becoming a free agent. If they would ever fire him, he would be hired the next day. There would be teams happy with their coaches that would consider firing their coaches to go get Mike Tomlin if Tomlin was available. That's how he's viewed among the league. I've told the story before. Other coaches who end up with players who played for Mike Tomlin, and not just Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Other coaches are like, how did he get that guy to perform? This guy is the biggest pain in my ass that I've ever dealt with. How did Mike Tomlin get him to perform in a way that nobody even knew he was a pain in the ass or was inclined to be a pain in the ass? Tomlin has that gift with getting through to every player, speaking to their better angels, and getting them to go out there and focus and play hard for him and not give in to the temptation to be a jerk, to be a problem, to be a nuisance. And, we all have those relationships in our life where there's somebody that we want their approval. And I think that Tomlin knows how to strike that with everyone he deals with to the point where you don't want to disappoint Mike Tomlin. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's viewed around the league as such a great coach. He knows how to get to grown men who may be cynical and jaded and selfish, and to get them to set that aside and focus on one thing and one thing only, winning the approval of their coach. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.